Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see all of you this morning. Good morning to our online family as well. If I have not had a chance to meet you, or if you are joining us online and we have not yet met, my name is Dionne. I just want to welcome you to Crossroads and just thank you for coming to spend some time with us on a Saturday morning. As we are going to be going into our workshop called Finishing Well. The reason why we're here today, the reason why you guys are here today, is because we're at that point where we've entered that stage of life where we've come to understand the importance of planning for our future. How we finish our time here on earth, how we finish this time spiritually, how we finish it in our relationships, how we finish it physically to the best of our abilities, and financially. So regardless of where we are, whether we're an adult child with parents who are entering this season of life, or we are the parent or the grandparent who wants to plan to finish well, we just hope today is going to be an encouragement to all of us to be able to plan and to have that conversation, especially with our families, especially with our kids, and just to be able to have all that. So as we begin, before we continue to move on, I would just ask you if we could just stop for a second and if you would join me in prayer, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you have a plan first and foremost. You have a plan for each person sitting here, a plan that started long before any one of us were ever born, and that throughout our lives, you have directed our steps, you have helped us with our choices, you have walked with us throughout the good times and the bad, guiding, directing, making yourself known so that we could follow you and glorify you through how we live our lives, choosing you, so that we can give that message to the world. And even, Father, as we enter into our stage of life where maybe some of us feel like we're not making so much of a difference, that this is a rich, beautiful time of life where we can make an even bigger impact than we realize. On our younger generation and for our friends around us. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving us the ability to do that, the wisdom through your word to be able to do that as well. So we pray that you bless our time today, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so we're here at our Finishing Well workshop, and I'm going to have to assume that most of us, if not all of us, have clearly had experiences with either a parent, a grandparent, or another family member who has either retired. Maybe we've had to look at long-term care needs, medically or physically speaking, might not be able to care for them at home. Maybe obviously even somebody who's recently passed on, and we find ourselves faced with a reality. The reality for the need for planning and decision making, and many families have done this well. They're already in the process, have done this, but also there's a lot of families maybe who haven't yet really been able to do this or taking the time to look at resources and costs and possible decisions that need to be made, whether it's legal, medical, or financial. My first experience with this was 22 years ago when my dad died. He had been on dialysis for renal failure for about 5 years. So when he died, I personally learned the challenge of making decisions and uncomfortable phone calls because, honestly, and this is not trying to be negative in any way, but it was a reality check because our family had no plans for memorial services or anything regarding that. Nothing else had been made in advance. So, like I said, for me and for my family, this really was a wake-up call. It was especially a wake-up call for my husband and myself because, as many of you guys know, our daughter Caitlin, who is special needs, who is now going to be 31 years old in a few short months, which, okay. Katie is special needs. And, sometimes for my husband and I, earlier on, we did not understand a lot of the legalities involved with a special needs child. Come to find out, in our state, once a special needs person turns the age of 18, they are legally considered an adult with their own rights, which would have meant Perry and I could not have made any more decisions for her, medical or otherwise. She would have had to do that on her own, and does not have the capacity to do that. So what we learned was we had to set up conservatorship so that we could continue being her parents, doing what we were already doing. So we had to do that. And then we also wanted to make sure that clearly had anything happened to he or I, that she would be taken care of. So we had to do a living trust with a special needs trust built in and get all of that taken care of as well. So, but all of this started with the understanding of what we had experienced with my father, and really just the realization that it's not always just as making our future plans isn't always as easy as just making our wishes known verbally. And so now for my husband and I, we're personally at the age in life where not only myself, but many of our friends have parents and grandparents that are going through season of life changes. And so the subject is becoming more important. And as adult children with families who are in this process, we want to take care of our parents. We want to honor their wishes and their choices. And we know as parents, we want to be able to leave our families with a legacy and with plans and the peace of knowing that all of things are taken care of. We realize that planning for end of life isn't always fun or comfortable for most people. Maybe some enjoy it. I don't know. There might be that strange person, good, smart person. But what I have learned is that there is no greater gift that we can give our families than to plan together what our wishes are, down to the detail of where we would like to live if we can't live at home, and what our plans will be, what to do with the car if we can't drive without any extra sets of keys. So hidden somewhere in the house. And just being able to do this together as a family rather than having to make decisions in crisis mode. And so this is why we as a church want to offer this very important workshop, not only to our church family, but to our community. This is why we're offering this online streaming, because this is available on Facebook and YouTube. And so it will be in our YouTube channel for reference in the future. But this is why we wanted to do this. We want to equip you. We want to equip our families with the resources needed to help through this process. And so in our time today, in the time that we've got together, we're going to learn about God's plan for this season of life, as well as the practical application of what this means. We're pleased to say that we've got numerous representatives who are going to be coming in from different organizations who will be able to, they're going to give their presentations. We are also going to be hearing, so we're going to be hearing from them. We're going to have a time of question and answer, question period and answers. And so they're going to be able to talk about things like insurance and living trusts and wills and long-term care and hospice and legal matters and all of that. And so we're going to go ahead and get started with our time. You will notice each one of you has a workshop packet. Inside the packet is our workshop schedule, so you can kind of keep track of where we are. For our families online, we will, if you have not had a chance to come in and pick up a packet, they will be available at weekend services today here at the Connections counter tonight and tomorrow, and or you can come pick one up during the week during office hours. Our office hours should be up on the screen for you, and along with our phone numbers so that you know how to get a hold of us. I think that's what I have, so we'll just have Mr. Bill come up and he's going to get us started on how to finish well. Thanks, guys.
Hey, it's good afternoon. It is good afternoon. Yeah, absolutely. Dionne said it. My name is Bill. Most of you I know, and thank you for coming here. This is a conference that we've done before. This conference, the first time we did it, it really triggered me into a lot of action and activity that needed to take place in my life. Dionne talked about her experiences. We recently did a message in here called Finishing Well. And that is on our website. You can get it on YouTube. You can get it from multiple sources. Encourage that you do that because it covered a lot of information we won't be able to do here. But one of the quotes, if you will, from that message that we did is one that I think is just very famous guy made this quote up. You know this one, we only get one chance to make a good first impression. And then an old bald guy made up the idea that we only get one chance to make a good last impression. At the end of the run, at the end of our time, we're leaving an impression. we're leaving an inheritance. We're leaving something behind us for our kids. It's an inheritance, whether it's money, property, that is received from the person who dies. That's an inheritance, and that's what we leave behind. I put another verse, or added another verse up in there, because I think it's critical for end-of-life decisions. It tells us that God is not a God of confusion, but a God of peace. Now, I've done hundreds of memorial services. Dionne's done memorial services. Marci organizes and arranges them all for us. One thing that is certain when someone passes away is some degree of confusion. There's going to be hurt. There's going to be stuff going on during the last process, and also immediately thereafter. What do we do? No matter how well prepared we are not going to think of everything. So this is an effort, a desire to do what we can do, to do the best we can do, to be prepared for ourselves, for our kids. And we have older family members, parents, grandparents that are there. What can we do for them? And that's really what we're going to be working on as we go through this. Today is not about us. It's about what we leave behind. So many people live on almost the last conversation. I don't know if you've had this experience. You've probably observed it from some distance, is when someone is in the last run in the hospital or at hospice, and the situation is getting where they're saying there isn't long, and you're on the phone, you're calling the family, they're rushing across, they're wishing to not step on a TV screen. They're wishing for one more hour in some cases, but often just one more day for someone to get there so that they can have their last words with them. I know several stories where they were waiting for one particular member of their family to get there. That member gets there. They see them face to face. They get an opportunity to exchange love. And then in that peace, they pass away. They were waiting for that moment to be able to do that. I love, there's a story in the Bible where Jacob, with his 12 sons, he stands up and he gives them a blessing and a promise and a prophecy about him, and he does his last words to his family. And then the Bible says he pulls his feet up on his bed and he dies. He's finished. He was done. He made that happen, and that's really what we're talking about today, to be as prepared as we can be. To prepare our kids and ourselves and everyone while we can do things. Dionne mentioned some stories, and some that I think we all have some, but I remember in the hospital with my brother, a lot of things happened. It was a confusing time. He's down south, and I was going back and forth to spend some time down there. We knew he was dying, and he did not have, like, for example, there's financial things that he couldn't take care of, that he needed to take care of as he was getting ready to die. So he wanted to give me a power of attorney to be able to do that. We draw up the papers, he's ready, but he's fading rapidly. We call in a notary, a mobile notary that will come in and notarize the documents for someone, and she didn't get there in time. He was still alive, but he was not functional enough for her to be able to accept his signature. Now, he had left a packet in his house for me with just some background and basic information that he had, but I had no authority or power to deal with any of it. That was all taken care of. I was able to help settle his debts and things like that as time went by. So just the preparation. Now, obviously on the opposite side of that, I've told this story before of my mother. She grabbed my mother was a good-sized lady, but she didn't grab her boys. and take them back into the bedroom by our ear. But she did take us back there directly and opened a drawer in the top of her dresser and says, it's right here. And pulls out an envelope and says, here's everything you need to know. Here's the burial instructions, and all of the other things that needed to take place. Will, all of those things were there. So that's the organization that's there. So no confusion. So we're going to talk today about having the talk. The very difficult talk of talking to a parent, a grandparent, who we're going to be involved with as they pass away, as they get older, what decisions have to be made. And we're going to be also talking about, I think, even a more difficult conversation is with our kids. Not because we don't want to have the conversation, but in many cases, we don't have the relationship with them that will allow us to have that communication. Or we have strained the relationship such that the relationship isn't mature enough for us to have it with them. We talked about this as when we went through the seminar. You know, we have to stop and think about this. We don't know when we're going to pass away. I don't know. I don't know the situation of my kids. They don't know when I'm going to pass away. And quite honestly, I don't know when they're going to pass away. My kids, I don't know how this happened. They're well into their 50s. I can't mention ages because I have daughters, and they never watched my messages. They'd watch that one if I ratted them out, and I'd hear about it. So that ability to do it, we don't know the end of our days. That's the verse, Lord, make me know my end, that the measure of my days. Let me know how fleeting life is. And so we're going to talk about the talk. Why don't we have that talk? And we'll go through a couple of reasons why we don't do that. Because there's a lot of talks as parents that I'd like to go back and have again. I was not ready and prepared to have the birds and bees talk when the kids were growing up. I had a talk with them. It resulted in something like, don't. It was, or I'll kill you. No, it was a loving interaction, but we focused on that. We got them to church. We talked about those basics. We didn't have the talk with them. Seriously, didn't. And one of the other things that I'm striving to have as I age is the other talk, not the sex talk, the relationship with Jesus Christ talk. One of the things that as I leave 3 children and 8 grandchildren behind, where are they with Christ? What is their relationship with Him? This is tender territory to walk into with your kids. Not so much that I'm making an assumption, and we'll talk about it as we go, but we know what is right. We know what is wrong. We know what the Lord requires of us. But to our kids, we live in a culture, and I say this probably too much, where there's a false Christianity, a false sense of okayness spiritually that permeates our culture. It's for me, as I look at my kids and grandkids, it's the most stressing thing that I look at, see, evaluate continuously to look for sparks of spiritual life or a fully dedicated follower or someone who's resistant with their arms out. We've got all. We've got the whole spectrum inside of our family now. So the importance of having that talk with them and their personal relationship with them, that's critical. Now, very important. Most people, when they're in the home, is the time to build that relationship so you can have the talk. So encourage those of you that still have willing ears at home, that you feed them, you give them a place that they have to listen to you. Ensure that you have that talk with them. Okay, the next talk that people don't prepare for is the one we're talking about today. Preparing for that last conversation that we have. Why? And again, this is critical, but why don't we do it? And I'm going to talk about a couple of them. One of them is just immaturity. And quite honestly, often that immaturity is on our side, the adult in the room. We don't want to talk about it. It's uncomfortable for us. It's uncomfortable for them. So we take a step back, and we don't have the maturity to have the conversation. Same reason, by the way, we don't have that sex talk or the other talks as we grow up, is just our own personal immaturity. And we said this during the thing, we have not developed our children to the point they're mature enough. We have adult children. We have children that are old, age-wise, but they don't have the social, relational maturity to have an adult-adult talk. One of the things that I would encourage, or at least this principle that we're going to put up, is a slide that we put up at the finishing well. We talked about 3 different relationships. We want to get to a place where we're not talking, if you take the arrow to parent to child, we're not talking down to them. Or if we're the child and we're talking to our parents about end of life, don't come with a parent voice and start telling you what they're supposed to do. That doesn't work. And for sure, what we want is an adult-to-adult conversation, which is going to take some things on our part. First off, a relationship with them that's stable. The ability to be able to talk to them as an adult is something that we need to prepare ourselves for and for them at the same time. To be able to explain, to talk, to have the relationship that allows that, approaching the end. And again, remember, they're uncomfortable. I've got some of my kids that just won't talk about it. I've got one that goes, and not in a rude way, but they just don't want to hear it. It's this. They'll almost do this in my face. Or, not now, Dad. Those kind of things. So to be able to develop this kind of a conversation is excellent. Some things that we talked about, and we'll get to the practical matters in just a minute, but some of the things is that continue to show Christ to each of them. Walk with them, help them. You know, one of the things, I recommend that I've used successfully is the book, The Radical Cross, for your kids. Give them the book, The Radical Cross. Have them talk about their relationship in Christ. You understand it. And then talk about that the radical cross. Christianity is this radical conversion that we have. It's not a momentary decision. We raise our hand in the back of the church when we're 15 years old and we're good for the next 70 years. It's an ongoing living relationship. So make sure that we have that talk. I had my son took the time to engage one of his children when they were having questions about God. And so he assigned homework to his child, said, okay, hey, he was actually not a child, he was going into late teens, but here's the book, Reasons for God by Timothy Keller. Let's go through it chapter by chapter, while we're together. And they took the time to go through Reasons for God, chapter for chapter. Here's the evidence for it. Now, that relationship is still ongoing. That particular grandson has not made that commitment. He made a commitment when young, but he has the information. He's still on the search mode. But the right thing was done. He had the information. We continue to do it all the way to the end. Again, and for us, torn between heaven and earth, we look there, but we're not, as long as we're here, we're not done. If we're breathing, we got stuff to do, and that applies directly to our families inside of our lives. What do we do? The real relationship, most important with them, is the biblical injunctions that make a biblical Christian. Do we love God? Have we been crucified with Christ? It's no longer I who live. These basic biblical verses which divide biblical Christianity with cultural Christianity, or almost secular Christianity, where we make it up as we go and define our own God. So those are the verses that I would encourage you to do. Because ultimately, I can't say this strong enough, and I think I speak for everyone here. The most important thing is for us to spend eternity with our kids. We've had good times down here, good. We've done those kind of things here. But have we been crucified with Christ so that we can, and have they been, so we will see them in heaven? I put up at the finishing well a picture of my family a number of years ago. And I can go from face to face to face, even though they've grown up from that picture. Boy, have they. But they're really getting old. I can't believe I haven't. But I look at each and every one of them and just say, I want him in heaven. I want her in heaven. What can I do? What part can I play in that? This is not make-believe. There is a real heaven. There is a real hell. We are all going to die. We're going to step from this world into another one. We're going to face Christ, and we're either going to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, or we're going to hear, depart from me. And that's what our kids are going to face. And I can't even imagine. I know there's no tears in heaven. I can't explain this to anyone or to myself, really. Is what would be the knowledge of seeing them turned away at heaven? Not turned away in a negative sense. They make the decisions like we make the decisions. So again, the importance of that relationship, it'll come up again in a while. But for us, demonstrate our relationship to the end. Leave certainty. Leave no doubt that we are following Christ with all of our heart, mind, soul, strength, that we're loving him with all we've got. When our kids think of us, they don't have any doubt. The experience that Dionne, myself, and Marci have at memorial services is sometimes almost the people struggling to put forth information that can give hope that whoever the deceased is in heaven. They're stretching. In some cases, the best they can come up with is they believed in God. Other times they'll say they were a good person. All of these removal of just general ideas, they were, worse yet, in 2022, one of the expressions is they were spiritual. Well, we're all spiritual. We got God's spirit or the devil's spirit, so we're all spiritual. What does that mean? The verses, love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, when we live, so that they have no doubt where we're going. This is one of the things I encourage. We don't retire spiritually. We work until we die. The expression is die first, then retire spiritually. We work right till the end. This love God with all we've got, well done, or Lord, Lord, didn't we do all this? And he says, depart from me. Because there's the deception of 2022. I won't hound that, but just a side note, and I was going to bring it up here. Hun, would you hold that thing up? The black thing? Yeah, swing it around the room. What was that lady's name on The Price is Right that would swing it around? What was her name? Come on. Who? Vanna White. Yeah, you guys are old enough to know. Thank you, Vanna. I appreciate that. Our next series that starts this week, actually, is telling other people about Jesus Christ. It's how we can talk to people and what's important to bring across, how to have the relationship, how to have the conversation. This is how we can have the talk with our kids. If you're unsure, if you haven't had the talk, you really have a couple choices. One, you can study up and go talk to them. Or you can bring them. That's cheating, but we accept cheating as long as it exposes them to the information that's there. And again, this goes back to your parents, this goes back to your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, the things people you really care about. These are conversations. And this, I encourage you to look at the material, fill that out, and be ready to respond. Leave certainty about ourselves, then also about them. And one of the things that Marci, bless Marci's heart, she put in your folder is planning your memorial service. Man, that's grim. And as you do that, though, I talked about this before. You pull that out and start going through it. Start thinking about the information. And now, better yet, let me not start there. Let's start here. Think about your kids reading that after you're gone, or preparing while you're in hospice or something like that. There's no uncertainty as to wishes and your desires and who you are. You fill this out. It's good information for you, as for your kids as they write obituaries, or you if it's for your parents. Have your parents. If you have an elderly, a senior that you're concerned about, that you're here to find out about it, have them talk to them about this. What do you want? Where do you want it? Where do you want us to have it? What do you want involved? Are there any songs that you want? And each one of these things, you can pick up extra copies. Have one for yourself, have one for your mate, have one for if you've got someone end of life issues that are coming at them, fill it out. Because again, what are we doing? We're adding certainty and removing confusion as to what we want. Typical memorial services is around an hour to hour and 15, depending on testimonies. Who wants to talk? That's something else you put in there. Who do you want to have talk for you? Maybe more importantly, who don't you want? Never mind. We'll let that one go. But these are things that you think about and you consider in advance. This is general background information that can obviously be there. I won't go through each and every one of them. How you met your spouse. And one of the stories that, how did you come to know Christ? I'm going to talk about this several times. In the evangelism series, we find out that the most important and the most potent tool we have to tell other people about Jesus Christ is our personal experience. What was it that brought us from the kingdom of darkness, controlled by this world and evil forces, to the kingdom of God, where Jesus Christ rules and reigns? What took place? What's the story? Most of you have been to Crossroads. You've heard 33 years. At 33 years old, I found truth, and it changed everything. That's my story, and I tell it, and I would want it told, that a dumb Marine found a bit of truth, and he hunted it down like a dog for the rest of his life, however many years there were. That's my story. Write yours. Doesn't have to be elaborate, doesn't have to be in detail, but it's something that's a living legacy that you pass on to kids, grandkids, and those who are behind you. Some awards, what did you do well? And also in this, I encourage you to do failure recovery. Failure, when you did something, the recovery out of that, and how you did that, what it took, what was perseverance, what those kind of things, how other people helped, how God helped, and also to be able to interact with the kids, their parts. Favorite Bible verses, Christian songs, videos, all the other things that are there, awards, date of service. We'll talk about this in a minute. If you're a service member, what do you want acknowledged at your memorial? There's a raft of a big long list of choices. Just take the time, and it doesn't have to be detailed, and you can kind of do it as a fun interaction with you and your mate, maybe writing each of yours at the same time, or with a friend, or even with the kids. Whoever you might want to have involved in that conversation if they're mature enough to be able to do it. So encourage you to do that. Now, the other paper in there is the big long Marofa, is the personal planning. all this is just incredible and great information for you as you do it. And I'm going to kind of talk about some of my prep that I've done. Coming to the end of my life, I want to, this thing we talked about in the Finishing Well message, radical love and service to other. I want to be serving, and this is part of serving. Radical forgiveness. Who do you know now that you are not relationally at peace with or has an issue against you? Make it right. I don't know if you've had the experience, most people I think have, where someone has passed away and there's a pain in the other person because that was never made right. And it goes both ways. It doesn't make any difference, but as a Christ follower, strive to make it at peace. I know people that I was not at peace with, and they died, and I didn't have the time, the energy, or the opportunity to make that right. This is before Christ and after Christ. Those relationships were there. Sadly, I remember when my father was dying. I didn't know Christ. My brother didn't know Christ. He was in the hospital. My mother had been faithfully serving him until the end. But it was obviously really close to the end, and she comes out of the room and with him and tells Jim, my brother, and I, go in and be with your dad. So we went in there, and we stood there for a while and looked at my dad. We looked at each other, and there was no relationship. I mean, it had been hurtful and painful, and he had been gone most of the time in the Navy. We just looked at each other and we left the room. Don't leave that. I don't know what I could have done at that point. I didn't have Christ. I didn't know Christ. I couldn't have passed on to anything. But I could have said, thanks, Dad, for being my dad, for raising me, for putting up with my jerkiness. All of those things, we could have said that. So this, not to dwell, but that's a huge deal. Don't leave regrets. If there's a rift in the family, do everything you can to bring that about. This radical forgiveness, live in harmony with everyone that's there, granting forgiveness to everyone who's around us, and continue to grow in Christ to the last minute. I love the two stories. A man in town here, well-known Christian educator, his wife found him, walked in, and he was in his recliner chair, where his I have one too. I hope you have I have a little throne in my house where I sit, and it's where all my books are around me, and I read the Bible and everything else. And so his wife goes in and finds him with his Bible open, passed away in perfect sleep. Just rest with the Bible open. What a story. They told that at the memorial. What a tribute to that. Another friend of mine talks about her husband who was very ill, and they were waiting for the ambulance to come to pick him up to take him to the hospital. And so Christians, they make this decision at the last moment, not the last moment, but as they're waiting, let's pray. And so they pray, she prays. She's more verbal than he is or was. And so he prays the final prayer, in Jesus Christ's name, amen. Boom. He leaves. Can you imagine what kind of comfort that brings her to tell that story all over town? She captured us in the middle of Thrifties and told us the story. What a certainty that she has, and what a testimony to the community. These are last things that we leave behind. You know, look at each of the things that are there, and forgive one another as we do that. Repent and grow all the way to the end. The last thing is tell everyone that you can. We're going to come to this in just a minute. Prepare in advance, because we don't know when. I want to emphasize that. I made a mistake probably 15 years ago. My wife and I were leaving immediately after the service to go to Newport Beach for some days. I'd packed my mountain bike. I was ready to go. I made one of the most foolish statements I've ever made in my life as we started this series, 30 Days to Live, not knowing how long you have. I said, well, I'm going to Newport, and I got my bike. I'm going to ride tomorrow, and it's going to be way cool, but I don't know how long I've got. The next day, I crashed, went down hard, way back in the mountains, broke my pelvis, and could barely get out of the mountains. I am never going to say anything that stupid again to open that, but it was, you don't know. That could have been it, Be prepared for each of these. Prepare in advance. There's that prepare in advance handout. And I'm going to talk about just a couple of things. Now, what I did today was I'm going to let you into my private world. You can see I'm not an administrative monster. This is. I went down to the basement. Years ago, Ronnie and I bought a fireproof box that was supposed to be a safe. So we put all of our last, documents into it, and then locked it up and then lost the key. Being a construction guy, I have a very big pry bar, so I was able to pry it open, and it will not be locked again. But it's there, and I've taken my kids to the basement, and I invite them in, and I say, there it is. There's the box. Anything happens to us, that's where you go. And I'm reminiscent of my mother that opened that thing and handed us an envelope or pointed out an envelope. So the first thing that it comes to is something I've shared before. And a lot of this, by the way, has really been good for me to remind myself. The first thing that when they open that box up, they're going to see this impressive stack of paper. And on the top of it, it's a letter. And it says, Dear Brandy, Sherry, and Liam. Those are my kids. Not knowing the details of our death, it is our prayer that you will know how much we love and respect you. You have been the joy of our lives. Above all, please know our hearts for you, your mates and your kids. Remember the good that we've done. Thank God for that. Please forgive the many times we fell short. Do not grieve as those who have no hope. We will see you again. Tell each of the kids we love them. And it goes on and on and on in that. It ends at the gets better at the end. My request is that you have a service and you play Amazing Grace at that. We've been planning my memorial services. People are fighting over the opportunity to not do it. But it's there. Oh, mine is just, I want Amazing Grace. I want people to know that I love God and tell them. Ronnie's request is that you start 10 minutes late. So she'll be there. I got an amen. Did I hear an amen back there? Yeah, I hear that. Okay. That was good. And I said the financial details and all that are in the trust. Use what you want. Give away what you don't want. Enjoy it all. In death as in life, we love you. Mom and Pop. And there's also we always feel it's wise to keep some cash in the house, so we had a little bag of cash, and it's in there. And we tell them, go spend the money and enjoy it. And so that's there. Do what you want. So I encourage you to create such a letter, to put there first. Now, we did our living trust, I believe it was 15, 16 years ago. And in 2018, we recognized that we had had a lot of changes inside of our lives, and things were changing. So we went back to Bakersfield and got a hold of Mr. Shaw, who had come to Ridgecrest actually and written up the living trust for us and for some other people that are here. So we went and this is with new information on the current assets we have, just everything that's there. So we have the updated living trust that's there. Encourage that, and definitely if you don't put a living trust in, please a will. And signed and notarized, everything, because there's stuff that happens at the end that if you don't have the certainty that's there can be a relative that you haven't known for 22 years or never even knew can come in and start stirring up trouble at the end if there's any question as to where your resources and assets go. That's an ugly fact. When in these situations, I was talking to someone recently about ambulance chasers that want to get in on the end action, and they stir up family members, they get lawyers, and they lawyer up and come in. Don't give them the opportunity. So anyway, letter to them, a stack of insurance. We really don't have a lot of insurance, but what we have, we wanted them to know, because we put that in place a number of years ago. Not that relative to us now, our financial situation. Directions for the trust deed. Who is the trust deed? Who is the person? It lays out all the basics of who's in charge of what. We took the time to make sure our kids are on all of our bank accounts. Make sure they're on your bank accounts, or that money is going to be frozen for a long period of time. They don't have to be active, but they've got to be able to have access to the number of accounts that you have so that they'll be able to disperse funds that you have at that time. So encourage you to do that. These are just nitty-gritty details, declarations, durable power of attorney that's given to the kids immediately so that they're able to transact for you as you go. I'm just going through these things and don't want to do them all. The envelope paid burial services and the desires. We'll have someone here from Holland and Lyons in a while that'll be talking about. We went, and Ronnie and I went over there and sat and talked, and what do you want? And what are your desires? Cremation or not? Direct burial? Those kind of things. Just take care. And you can pay, or you don't have to pay. You can just make your wishes known. But I encourage you, if you can, pay. It's just one more financial burden that you can take off your kids at that time. So do that. Another one that I have stuck in there is my DD 214, your military service. If one of the questions that'll be asked is, if you were a veteran, do you want military honors? Do you want the military to be present to present a flag? Do you want that, or do you not want that? Do you want them at the graveside? What recognition do you want? And it's always important, by the way, if you had awards and things like that, to make note of those things, both military and civilian. We have our birth certificates, all our titles, so they know where those are. Again, there's just so much minutia and paperwork in here, but it lays out absolutely everything you have. One of the things that we talked about, and I encourage you, one of the painful decisions that you have to make is your desire for end of life and continuing life support systems. Do you want to be, maintained over life? I can't tell you the number of times we've been in a room where that decision is put in front of people, removing life support. The DRE that will be in a living trust. If you don't have one, the hospital will provide one. Your doctors will provide one when you go in, and they'll often ask, do you have this? If it says you're going into surgery or anything like that, it should be part of your medical records. The family should have a copy of it, because you don't know what hospital you're going to be in. It should be transportable. Just make sure that everyone knows, because they can't do anything without that. They're bound by law to continue to prolong life unless you tell them there's a limit to that. That's a decision that all of you make. One of the things, and I said this in the service, and before, pulling, and again, if you're in that situation where you've got seniors ahead of you, removing life support does not mean they're going to die. It means you're not going to sustain it. God will sustain it if he wants him to. I tell the story every time, and most of you have heard it. We prayed through my mother-in-law. She was in there. We removed life support. She lived 10 more years. Yeah. The power and life and death are in Christ, not us. He rules. God rules over all. He knows when we were created in that moment, and he knows the moment we're going to die. But for your family's sake, let them know what your wishes are at that time. Each advance directives, all of those things, have them in place as you do that. We have ours in there and put away. Other things, and I want to go back to, but again, all of these things, you've got a really good list in your handout there of things that need to be taken care of. For me, what this has triggered, for me, getting ready for the last couple of weeks and this message we just did, 2 weeks ago, I sent 2 letters to grandsons because they're at pivotal points in their life. So I reaffirmed my relationship with them. The 2 that I probably have the most relationship with, grandkids. And so to be able to encourage them in Christ, in their career, and affirming, Ronnie and I affirmed our love for them and our support for them and anything we can do. But it's a letter that gives our heart for them and our desires. This week, there's 2 more letters that I want to write to 2 other grandsons that are at pivotal points inside of their life. And my prayer and my hope is that knowing some of the spiritual struggles that they're having and some victories, but maybe you always see things. We live in a world of deception. One of them has made a recommitment to Christ, but has been drawn away by some of the philosophies of this world. And so I'm writing to him and giving him a book specifically focused on his area of interest and actual spiritual confusion at this time. And the other one, I'll also be sending a book to him, just to encourage him to reevaluate the direction that he's going and reaffirm love and support and all of those things too. So that's some of the things that I'm attempting to do as I go forward to do that. Tell our loved ones. The preparation checklist, each one of those things are powerful tools to be able to use as we go. Again, let everyone know where it is. Please let everyone know where those documents are that are going to be first involved. A great way to prepare is to just talk to them. Engage them personally. We have a spread out family. We have one in Virginia, one in Oklahoma, and one in Riverside. Would we get them in the room? We just had 2 of them visit us. They come to check and see how we're doing on us. So we've had the conversation with 2 of them recently, and the third one's in Oklahoma. Haven't had that. Hope to. Encourage you to do that, to figure time, set it aside. When can we talk? You know, those are just some of the things I am preparing my own memorial just to take the pressure off everybody. I'm a control freak, and I want to know exactly everything that's said. Not totally, really, but yeah, partially. That's what I'm doing now. I want to stop for a while. We're going to ask if there's any questions now that apply to anything that I said. There'll be people coming in a while after our break. Do you have any questions? Yes. A will is a very direct document, not detailed, but it can be as detailed as you want it to be. It can cover the different things that are there, but a will can be a casual thing that you just write out and sign and date. It's more informal. A living trust is that all of our property has been taken out of our name. It's been put into a trust where our kids are co-signers on it. So they have immediate access. All of our property, cars, everything else. I think Ronnie tried to put me in the trust. So ownership is transferred to them. It's theirs. So the living trust is something that's an ongoing living document that covers all aspects of the end. The will, unless you get a lawyer to write it up, then you're going to almost get a living trust. But it doesn't transfer property to the trust. It keeps it from going, and again, everyone, don't let your property go into probate. Don't. That only one that helps is the lawyers who get to fight it out over the next 10 years. So, not that wills aren't a good thing. They're a start. If you don't have one, write one, but work toward a living trust. I think you mostly heard the question about retired military. One of the things that's a resource that most people, that I'm just going to do a little bit of bragging here, is obviously the church will help where we can. Debra from Holland and Lyons is an expert. She knows absolutely everyone to contact, who on base, what office on the base. Marci's got some expertise in that area, but Debra handles it all the time. We just had a situation where just recently you went in and she said, I'll contact them, I'll do this, she walks you right down the checklist. She will get that done. There is an office on the base, HR out there, that also has a special desk. That's who she calls. You might want to just touch base with them. Okay. Yeah.
Well, my question was, I thought I heard you say that all the children should be involved in the assets or whatever, but I always was under the impression that you named one person, maybe the oldest, to distribute the stuff.
Yeah, they'll have an executor over all of them. But in that, if that one is unable to perform, and anyone else can jump in with that, it's you point to one person. We put our oldest daughter in charge. She's kind of a DI. You'll understand that. But they all are listed on there as part of it, and in order that they would be the ones that are directed to do it. And it definitely, in a will situation, if it's a will and not a living trust, you definitely want to talk about who's going to be executing it as the executor of that will. Yeah. But again, this gets into incredible detail. Yes, but they have to know who's in charge. You give them the point person, because someone's got to have the final word. I won't even ask for a show of hands, but I would be just shocked if we all haven't been involved in a situation where after a death, the brothers, the sisters, the aunts, the uncles are fighting over resources and assets. So appoint someone.
Hi.
Okay. Hey.
Is there a difference between trust and a living trust?
Good question. I don't know. Is anyone? Gary. Gary, by the way, will be speaking later about trust and living trust.
Okay, so a living trust, there's a difference between, there's all kinds of different trusts. There's chair remainder trust, there's revocable trust. Revocable trust means you start the trust up and you can't change it. It's there, you lose all control. A living trust is where most people do. It helps you avoid probate. It gives you clarity of where you want things to go. You assign a trustee that you trust, who will do everything you ask you to do. It includes a will, typically power attorneys for finances, power attorneys for your health. That's what most people do. But there's tons of trusts. I just named like 3, but there's much more than that. So the main difference is revocable, and then like a living trust, which is revocable. You can change it at any time, as long as you are mentally capable.
Yeah. Again, that's the question. We updated ours at 2018.
Bill, I was told by the lady at the bank that what I have, after the decease, my brother-in-law and Linda, that it wasn't a living trust anymore.
Okay.
But it looks all legal to me, and it's all signed and notarized, so I was gonna ask that gentleman if,
Okay, that might be a question to ask him that does that, but one of the things is, again, he's gonna tell you, he's not a lawyer.
Yeah, okay.
I'm aware enough of the situation to know that you're not suffering any financial loss from them not
No,
accepting
no.
it as that.
Right.
So I would not lawyer up at this
okay,
point.
and so I don't have to worry about it.
I would not worry about it.
This is not so much a question as just to give some information out. If someone has Medi-Cal, there are rules, and I recently got a cremation policy, what Debra helped me with, and by making it irrevocable, it does not become an asset, which is a problem. Your assets are a problem to qualify for Medi-Cal.
Okay,
So anybody that's on Medi-Cal, there are different things that you need to watch out for.
Right.
As far as assets, and I am even concerned, and this is a question, if I put my sister on my bank account, will it affect my qualification, or if she has to go on Medi-Cal, her qualifications will
Yep.
be counted as her asset, which
Yep.
might disqualify her from
Yep.
the services.
yeah, good statement, and by the way, this is a very tricky area, that what is allowed to get Medi-Cal, because many people are counting on Medi-Cal to support them in long-term care. So we need to know how much money we can have in our account at that time. Marci?
Hi. So a lot of you know me, and I'm the memorial coordinator here, so I've seen a lot of stuff. So I just have a couple of things. If you have a safe and you have important documents in it, share the combination with your spouse or a child. We had to help somebody actually cut into a safe to get into it when the spouse had died, and the surviving one didn't know how to get in that safe and needed the papers in there. Yeah. Also, if you're, a married couple, a lot of times one person pays the bills. Both of you need to know what bills you have and where to find them, and everything about your finances, even if you don't do them every month, you need to know what's there and what kind of things, if your spouse just all of a sudden, passes, you need to know how to take care of stuff and what you're responsible for, what is there and what needs to be done, and where are your important papers and those. So those, some of those forms that are in there, now my spouse passed many, many years ago, but both of my daughters know where all my stuff is and how to get to it. I've also left information about my passwords to get into different accounts like online and Facebook, so that they can go in there and, get rid of my Facebook account. Just things like that to think about, that if you're gone, what's going to be left there for people to take care of? And they've got to be able to get into those accounts and know where that information is.
Yeah, that's great, the passwords particularly. And you can store them with me. No, just kidding.
On another note, with Medi-Cal, if somebody is on SSI and receiving SSI, I think most people know that oftentimes you can't exceed $2,000 in your bank account. So if you have a family member who wants to leave a person on SSI a large chunk of money, make sure it's large enough to live on for the rest of their lives, because that will then revoke their SSI. So just like for my daughter, since Katie does, we had to think about that for any of our retirement funds. Obviously, Evan will get it all. Let's hope he shares with her. But, so that's something to think about, too, if we have somebody that we want to leave money to. Miss Mary, you had...
One more thing. I understand, and I don't know if this is still true because I learned this quite a while back, that when the bank is advised that your spouse is deceased, they lock up your safe deposit box. The spouse, the living spouse, cannot get into it until the IRS comes and checks it out for valuables, etc. So the bank is another situation where you need to know what happens if you've got more than one person on the account.
No, I think we just had a situation, if I'm correct, where someone was able to get into the safe deposit box with both keys. That was the secret that unlocked it, both keys.
Yeah, it was my sister, not my spouse. And there were papers in there and things that she left. So I didn't have a problem because she was a federal employee, but I had a question.
Go ahead.
It's on my text if it did it right, but if you are on Medi-Cal, not SSI, are you allowed to leave your home to a family member that's going to pick up the pieces, be the executor?
We will have, we are going to have somebody who will be able to answer those kinds of questions as a speaker towards the end. So like I said, if we can't answer them, hang on to them, and we will get to them later.
Okay.
Okay, we are back. Thank you guys again for joining us, our online family. I hope you guys have had your break and you're able to rejoin us as well. We are very, very thankful that we've had some of our local representatives be able to come help give us some information and answer questions that we may have. We are going to begin with State Farm. Gary, Charlon, and Chris will be up here, and Gary has a presentation that he is going to give, and then he will be able to, after his presentation and what Gary has to let us know, Gary will go ahead and do question and answer after you are done for whatever you have. So come on up, gentlemen. We're going to get started.
Thanks for having me here. We have a video we're going to watch. I'm not the living trust person. Bill was a little confused on that. I want to make sure that's clear. I do know a little bit about it, but we have experts in the back who do a great job. We're going to be talking about that. So I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking a little bit about life insurance. And part of the life insurance that people have can be used for charitable, right? So you could name, if you don't need the life insurance anymore, you could name Crossroads or your church to get the beneficiary, which will help you on taxes and actually help you give back to the church, to help the church keep going in the future. So we have articles in the back about how that works. It's fairly simple. It's just as people don't have money that they got a life insurance and have no use to give it to anybody else. A charity is a great place to give it to. It's a win-win situation. If you have money like sitting in a CD, and as we all know, CDs don't make a lot of money, and it's what we call never money. You don't plan on using it. You're going to plan on giving it to your kids, your grandkids, or a charity. Life insurance, if you can qualify, is where you can actually double that money and give a lot more, right? And every charity needs more money. So if there's ways you can help, that'd be perfect. So we have an article we're going to give you, if you'd like, at our table up there. We're going to watch a video, just give you a little explanation on life insurance. It's only 5 minutes long. It explains the two different types of life insurance. There's term and whole life, all right? And you may have questions after that. We'll answer that, right? Another thing on the back when we're done too, it's called 5 Wishes. I believe in living trusts and wills. Most people just don't seem to get around to it. I had a client that when we do what we call reviews with people, I always mention, do you have a will or a living trust? I've been through experience where people haven't, and I encourage people to do it, but everybody says I'm too busy. I don't ever get around to it. I do have this quick story. I had a guy who's just turned 85 years old. He goes, Gary, you'd be really proud of me. I'm alive, and I got my living trust done. So, so that was a good thing, right? So we definitely encourage that. We also encourage, I used to sell long-term care insurance. State of California is really hard. Most companies have pulled out of it. I have what they call next steps. This is, and these are free. If you want to sign up for them in the back, we'll get them to you. It has, so it's talking about having a conversation, a serious conversation when you're talking about serious illnesses in the future, right? And it talks about having that conversation with your relatives and gives you ways to make it easier for you to have that conversation, which is not an easy conversation, right? It's as bad as when you have kids and talk about sex, right? And now you got to talk about older people about their illnesses, but it's real, right? Okay, so we're going to start with the video, right? And then we're going to give you a little information about the charitable, and then we'll go with that.
People get life insurance for a lot of different reasons, but those reasons boil down to something pretty simple. They want the people they love and care about to be taken care of. Problem is, life insurance can be complicated, so let's try to make it a little simpler. There are thousands of different types of policies out there, being sold by hundreds of different companies. Yet all of these policies really fall into one of two categories. They are either short-term in nature or long-term in nature. And there are things I like and don't like about both types of policies. So let me show you how these work, and you decide what type of policy is most suitable for you. First, short-term policies. What we like about short-term policies is they are cheap initially. You can get a lot of coverage for a little bit of money when you're young. But the downside is, the older you get, the more expensive they become. So before we go any farther, it is very important to ask and answer this question. How long do you want your life insurance to last? Let me show you how they work. Short-term policies are a lot like running stairs. Think back to high school or college. Did you ever have a coach make you run stairs for conditioning? How did it feel when you started? How did it feel when you got to the end? When you're in your 20s, you can get a short-term policy, let's say, for $100,000, for as little as about $10 to $15 a month. However, this same policy in your 30s will cost $30 to $40 a month, and in your 40s, it will cost $100 to $150 a month. In your 50s, it can cost $400 to $500 a month, and in your 60s, $1,500 to $2,000, and so on. Pretty soon it gets so expensive that you cannot afford it any longer, and you cancel the policy. The company keeps the premiums you've paid, and you walk away with nothing. Did you know that only 1.2% of these policies ever pay out? What I don't want to have happen is that you buy one of these policies and then 20 years later find yourself faced with staggering premiums that you can't afford. This is the downside of a short-term policy. Now, let's look at long-term policies. What we don't like about long-term policies is that they are more expensive initially, but they are the cheapest option out there if you want your policy to last until you die. This is how they work. Long-term policies look a lot like a bucket. How old are you? Do you know when you're going to die? Did you know that the life expectancy of a woman is around age 92 and a man's is around age 90? So if you're, say, 45 and your life expectancy is 90, then the insurance company can expect the likelihood of collecting premiums for the next 45 plus years. The idea is to average the expense of the policy over your entire life so that it is more affordable over the long term. You see, they overcharge you here so they can undercharge you here. Because we are heavily regulated in this industry, the government says that an insurance company has to provide other benefits as well as a death benefit. A long-term policy is a lot like a bucket, a place where you can store cash, like a savings account. Do you know what you earn in a savings account at the bank? Probably about 0.25% to 0.5%. Depending on the type of life policy you select, you can get a bucket savings account that gives you a guaranteed rate or return in the 2% to 4.5% range, with life insurance coming along for the ride. Another bonus is your account compounds your interest like a Roth IRA, tax-free. Let's say you have $150 a month you want to put towards your life insurance. Each month, your contribution goes into the bucket earning interest. A small amount comes out of the bucket to pay for the death benefit, which covers the cost of the insurance. The rest of your money stays in the bucket earning a compound interest return tax-free, waiting for the day you want to withdraw it. So, when all is said and done, you get an account that pays out if you die, and an account that pays you out if you live. Either way, you or your family will get your money and an interest rate return that is tax-free. This is better than what you can get in a savings account at the bank. With these basics in mind, the most important question you should answer is, what can you afford? Can you afford $1,000 a month? $500? What does your budget have room for? Once you know what that number is, we can run calculations on what your policy will look like and how it will grow and work for you, either short-term or long-term.
All right, and before any Q&As, Derry just wanted me to read a little bit about using life insurance to make charitable donations. Naming the charity of your choice as the beneficiary of your life insurance policy is the simplest way to provide a charity with the death benefit proceeds from a policy. It doesn't offer the income tax advantages that come with gifting a policy, but it still reduces the donor's estate by the amount of the death benefit. Donors who aren't completely sure how they want to distribute their assets after death can list a charity as a revocable beneficiary. Gives the flexibility in case their financial situation changes. If the donor chooses to stop paying the premiums, the charitable organization can choose to continue the process or can allow the policy to lapse. Naming a charity as a beneficiary also ensures the privacy of the transaction, which can be important for donors who wish to keep their gifting intentions secret from their families or other heirs. Transfer of assets from an insurance contract cannot be contested, making it impossible for anyone to stop the donation from occurring.
So do we have any questions?
First thing, Gary, is I need to talk to you about getting some life insurance on Nancy. I have a policy with you on me, so I'm not sure if term or the long term would be best. So we need to have that conversation. But I want Nancy to, I guess life insurance wouldn't be for Nancy, it'd be for whoever stays around, but. Right. So we need to talk about that. So what would your opinion, because you know me, you know what we got going.
Right. But basically, we probably have to sit down, kind of look at what you're looking at, right? What you're trying to accomplish, and then do we determine that? So come on in, yeah, we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm.
Is life insurance a necessity if you're debt-free and you're single?
So if you just put that in a box like that, the answer would be what? No.
No.
Right? Right. Okay, so life insurance does a lot more, right? I mean, if you want to transfer assets to your next generation, and you want to keep the things going, life insurance is a good way of doing that. It's much better than transferring an IRA to your kids or grandkids, or a 401k or TSP, because that's all taxable, correct? And right, so if you have those assets, and you really weren't going to use them, and you were going to give them to pass them on, there's life insurance is a much better way to pass it. It's only one of the few products out there that you can go tax-free. You never have to pay tax on that benefit. They will pay tax on that 401k or IRA, and well, it depends on when they get it too, right? So if they're both, let's say they're in their 50s, all right, that you pass it on, give them $100 or $200 or $300,000, they have to start taking that money out immediately, and they're taxed at the higher income for it, right? And they just changed the law, just so you guys know, they're working on changing laws constantly. They just changed it in what they call the CARES Act. You used to be able to spread that charitable, the IRA transfer and inherited IRA for 30 years, 20, 30 years. They could, based on the person's age, mortality, and the balance, they would tell you how much you would have to take out every year. They've lowered the gap. It's all out in 10 years. And the reason they're doing this, and they're going to constantly look at this, is they need more money. And if you look at where all the money is, where people have, they're in their IRAs and their 401ks. Congress and them look at that, go, this is good stuff. How do we get it quicker, right? So you're going to constantly see the laws change, and it's going to get worse. We're transferring to your kids. So life insurance right now is still the best thing to transfer to them. Tax-free, private. If you qualify. Not everybody qualifies, though.
While I'm getting over here, Howie, I'm going to ask a question, Gary. What about life insurance policies with long-term care built in?
Yes, they have those as a rider today. So that basically you could have a death benefit, and if you don't use it, and has long-term care built into it. So if you never have to use long-term care, it'll be paid out in a death benefit eventually. So people get frustrated for paying for long-term care if they never need it, right? But remember, insurance is one that protects you from risk, right? So that you don't have to pay 100%. So you're passing on a percentage to the insurance company, and then they're going to take the risk on. You're passing it to everybody else. So some people use it, some people don't. The rider is not a bad way to go. But there's a cost to that too. So, but that is available.
So with that being said, and what you said just a little bit earlier, it's tax-free. So if you pass it down the line, it's tax-free as it stands right now. Is it not the fact that Congress, you stated that they're trying to get their hands on more money, which is what government does. But, so now you're stating it's tax-free now, but from things I've heard, they're looking at doing a death tax or something like that, just so they can get into every avenue of it as it comes down the line.
Okay, so what I've seen more than that, because the insurance companies have been really good about keeping them not touching life insurance, is more that when, I'll give you an example, the next step is you have a house, right? So let's say let's say my dad passed, he did pass, and then at the day he died, the value of that home was the day that happened, not what he paid for it, right? They want to eliminate that. They're looking at that, they're looking at stocks, bonds, anything and that's just investment, not just an IRAs, that not giving the cost basis to the kids. You can do that with your spouse, not a problem. When I keep constantly looking and reading, I have not heard anything said about life insurance. So, but I do see it on the other side. They're looking well, they have to. They're in big debt, right? I'm sure Bill talks about that. I mean, I study this all the time. I remember when they said from the government, from the GOA, that they projected $30 trillion worth of debt by 2030, right? And we blew through that, right? And so we'll probably be somewhere around 86 trillion in debt by 2030. So they don't have, which is weird, they don't have a system set up for us they have a system set up how to get money from us. I wish they had another committee or group that says, how do I lower expenses, get the cost down, so at least both are working together. We don't have it. We have them looking for all the money they can get out of our hands. And that's not a good thing.
Can you just touch on pre-existing conditions and how that applies to obtaining the life insurance?
You want to tie that one? No? You want me to do it? Okay. Pre-existing conditions basically can affect you on getting insurance. Doesn't mean you can't get insurance. There might be an extra cost, but sometimes there's some pre-existing conditions you can't get it, right? That's why we always believe to try to talk to people sooner than later before things happen, because things do happen, especially as you get older. So I don't know if very many people here work with the federal group, the federal civil service. Anybody who's civil service here? Okay, so on the civil service, we spend a lot of time. We actually have another video that we're not playing today. It talks about the federal group life insurance. The federal group life insurance is a good deal. The basic one's really good, but it's the option B gets really expensive. And as we saw in stair steps, option B gets ridiculously expensive, right? But if you wait too long and you can't qualify, you're stuck with that. So we try to encourage people, while your health is good, you can actually buy insurance cheaper from an insurance company than you can from the federal government on the B coverage. B coverage is 1 to 5 times your annual salary. It's not the basic, so you still get the basic, but it can get really, really expensive. I've had people over the years, example, I've spent a lot of time studying this too. I would show people we can save you, that we could possibly save you money. Can't guarantee it. But people procrastinate, right? And wait, I'll get with you sometime, right? And they just don't. And then they'll give us a call and go, and this is true stories. I just had a heart attack. Now what can I do? Well, there's nothing I can do, right? I'm serious. I mean, but now they're stuck with that coverage. So group life insurance, and let me explain to you why it's expensive. So on the group policy of the federal government's, on the B coverage, it doesn't matter if you're female or male. It doesn't matter if you're good health or not. They have open season. They take everybody. So actuarially, right? It's still an insurance company, so they have to budget in or price that in. And if they just increase their rates again for the older people. So if you're getting people that are leaving that pool, then that means the rates have to constantly go up. And that's about the only thing they've increased. They've lowered prices on younger people and raised the prices on older. So it's something people should look at. If you know any friends or people are in it, they should take the time to look at before it's too late.
And going back to the pre-existing conditions, some can make it ineligible, some could just charge a surcharge, cause a surcharge. The best thing to do is to look into it, right? Come talk to us, talk to someone. Typically, when you apply for a life insurance policy, all of the underwriting is going to be done on the insurance company's dollar, not yours. And you do have the option to walk away from the policy, or they have the option of not, offering that policy in the end. So it's worth it to just look into it.
Yeah. No pressure. Yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
I have an existing policy with you right now.
Uh-huh.
I would like to add to it. Would you add to it, or would you just do a new policy?
So depends on that exact policy. We have to look at it, if it can be added to,
Yeah, okay.
or we do another one. So,
All right.
yeah.
That was it.
Okay?
You still have to qualify if you want more coverage, though, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you kept the basic coverage, right? It drops after you're 65, drops 2% per month till it gets to about age 69, and then it gives you, that's the base, and stay that way the rest of your life. So use $100,000, for example, it'll drop down to $25,000, and you get to keep that the rest of your life. You're not paying for that anymore at that point.
Okay, for time purposes, thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. Gary and Chris will be available at the end. Next up, we have Debra from Holland and Lyons, who is going to give us some very important information as well. Just a reminder, all of our representatives will be available at the end for questions and getting information.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak with you today. And so you've heard the term preacher's kid. Well, I'm a funeral director's kid. My father, H.K. Holland, founded Holland and Lyons Mortuary in 1967. I followed right along with him growing up in the business, and I'm fortunate enough to say that 2 of my children are as well. So we've been in the community for 55 years, serving generations of families. So we've lived in a world the last few years that we've seen lots of changes and lots of things happening. And so I just wanted to touch on a few things with you today about what the greatest gift that you can give to your loved one when you pass away is that you have completely paid and set what type of funeral or cremation arrangement that you would like. Specifically, in our society today, we have many blended families, and the greatest gift you can give them is that they see what is written and paid for, that's what mom or dad wanted. You take out all of the discussions that can get very lively on what mom wanted or what dad wanted or what cousin Joe wanted. So really, we make appointments and schedules. If you have a doctor appointment or a dentist appointment, we all make those appointments. The best gift that you can give someone you love is to encourage them to come in and see us and talk about what it is after you pass away that you would like to have done. So there's the option also, and I've dealt with this just recently. Gentleman came in and paid, he wanted a full funeral with a local burial, and he paid for that. Well, he passed away. His wife had previously passed away, and his children came in, and they did not want him to be buried. They wanted him to be cremated. Well, because he paid for burial, he chose exactly what he wanted, then the mortuary, I'm legally bound to follow exactly what is paid for. And I can show the family, this is what your dad paid for, this is what he wanted, this is the casket that he wanted, and it cannot legally be changed. So you take out so many conversations that can oftentimes turn into big disagreements. And so that's what I would encourage you today, is to think about what it is that you would like to be done with when you have passed away. Whatever it is, you need to get that down in writing, and I encourage you to pay for it in advance. Another thing that has come really into the discussion of somewhere in California, people have gotten the idea that common law marriage is legal. And in California, it is not legal. So many times I have lifelong companions that they may have lived with someone and consider themselves married, and I'm dealing with this now for 35 years. Unfortunately, because their loved one did not pay for their service in advance, they did not have a health care directive, which I'll talk to you in advance, means that the adult children are the legal next of kin. So, unfortunately for her, that she is not the mother of those children. So what I'm going to say is if you are not legally married, or you want to designate a specific person to be your agent to take care of your decisions after death, is to have an advanced health care directive. The advanced health care directive allows you to make decisions, your agent to make decisions for you when you no longer can, and after death. I have a few samples, pamphlets that you can get in the back, and you can also pick them up at the hospital. They either need to be witnessed or notarized. So very, very important for you to do. So let's see. Not sure. Well, so a question would be, well, if I prepaid for my funeral, what if I move? Well, I offer forethought funeral planning, which is a whole life insurance. That policy can be transferred to any funeral home that you choose. Often people move out of the area or in the area. So depending on what your specific need is that we can help you. So let's see. Do you have any questions that maybe I could help you with? Yes?
My husband and I have made our arrangements in Bakersfield.
Okay.
If we die here in town, obviously your place of business is going to pick our body up. Would we be cremated here, or would we be shipped to Bakersfield and be cremated there? Because I had an issue when my father died.
Okay, so if you have made your arrangements with a funeral home there in Bakersfield, then at the time of passing, that would be whom you would call.
I couldn't make the call, and this is what happened. The call should have been made. They were notified that they were to make the call, but they didn't. They called you guys. So I paid a great deal of extra money because my father was taken care of here and then shipped away. So I paid twice. The people where he died didn't make the proper call, and they were told to make the call, not to you, but to another home, another mortuary.
Well, that's unfortunate. The person who would be handling your arrangements would have to have that. If you pass away at your residence or you pass away at the hospital, that person is whomever is going to be taking care of you would have to know. Many times, if you pass away at a residence and you have an arrangements with an out-of-town mortuary and they cannot get here in a timely fashion, you can't just be left to stay at your home. So in that case, you are going to have to pay for my service to come and bring you to the mortuary until the funeral home that you have selected can come and pick you up. If you pass away at the hospital, usually on your arrangements, your next of kin would be needing to say who you should be should be called. So we can only deal with what we know, and so what would be really important is that whomever would be your next of kin or the person that would be making the arrangements would know what arrangements you would want to have. Okay?
Hi there. Could you go over the veterans, what you do when a veteran passes and a veteran needs to be buried by the veteran?
Okay, so when we make arrangements for a veteran, what we need to help you is to have a DD 214. So that needs to be kept in your important papers so that whomever is handling your arrangements can bring that in. Currently, what the veterans offer is you're provided one free certified copy of the death certificate, which is $24. You can receive military honors from the branch of service that would include flag folding and presentation of playing of taps. You can be buried in a national cemetery at no charge. There is the charge of transportation if you are body burial, but the cemetery charge, there is no charge for the cemetery. And that also includes a headstone. And if you are married, you can reserve a place for them as well at the time that we make arrangements. If you, when you would meet with us, I have information for the Veterans Affairs Office here in town, also in Bakersfield, that if you are receiving any kind of disability funds, anything, you can check to see if there would be any benefits available. Oftentimes, if you pass away in a VA facility, they will reimburse the transportation that you've paid. Some families have the idea, because you are a veteran, that the veteran, there's not any charge for services of funeral or cremation, and that is not the case. The veterans do offer a free burial at a national cemetery. If you're buried in a public cemetery, then they do provide the headstone, and in some cases they may, on disability, pay some towards the cost of the cemetery, but that's an individualized basis that you have to check with your VA representative.
So the VA doesn't pay for everything?
Absolutely not.
Hang on, Mr. Bob. We'll take one more question, and then we'll go ahead and have our next speaker come up.
For veterans, do you get to pick which national cemetery?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you do. There are some that they don't have any more space for body burial, and there are some that, like for example, Arlington National Cemetery, you have to be of a certain rank before you can be buried there. But the national cemeteries are very good to work with. We work through what's called a national scheduling office, and they've always been really helpful.
Okay. All right, Deborah, thank you so much. She will be available afterwards, of course, for anybody who has any questions or wants to pick up the advance directive packet. Our next representative is Ed Ortega and Tomieanna Campros. So if I can have you fine folks come on up. They're our legal friends. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm I'm Tomieanna Campros. I'm a paralegal. Work for a lot of attorneys, mainly my husband, who's an attorney, who's in the back, but of course delegated to me, because attorneys delegate everything to their paralegals. Just to make sure I put that out there. Rhonda Ebsen is an assistant in my office, and she invited me here today to ask if I would give some information. Sorry. She asked if I would come in and give some information about living trusts, and I recognize a lot of you out here, by the way, about living trusts and wills and estate planning, so that you could make some notes for yourself about what you can do to go forward with a good estate plan. An estate plan, first of all, is about two things: while you're alive and after you pass away. And an estate plan encompasses a little bit of everything that's been talked about today, but it's from the legal perspective. It starts with, while you're alive, having a durable power of attorney, which is designating somebody who can help you with your finances if you become incapacitated. It comes second with an advanced health directive, which is assigning somebody who can enforce your wishes regarding your health if you are unable to do so for yourself. It also comes with establishing a way to avoid probate. And just so you can kind of hear that dirty word, a lot of people say probate. Probate is a legal action after a person passes away to distribute their assets. So that means it's the government getting involved with your life once more, one last time, even after the grave, to take care of your assets. There is a way in California, uniquely, it came about because of some very rich senators in the 1980s. California was full of lots of money in the 1980s, and the senators really wanted to avoid probate actions on their own estates. And today, the living trust system that they set up still exists. It's a fairly good system in California. We can't say a lot of things about California law, but living trusts are one of them. And the living trust system continues to develop fairly good things for California. In California, there have been some recent changes that are not great. It is separate for each person's estate, whether or not it applies to you. In particular, real estate transfers to your children have changed recently. I would encourage you to seek legal advice regarding those particular issues. If you have an older trust before 2015 or before, your trust may need some updates because of the laws that occurred after 2015. So a living trust, I like to explain it like this. Imagine your living trust is setting up a family business, and you're literally going to make a name for your business. And you're the CEO, and your husband could be a CEO also, but you're the CEOs of your business. And you, while you're alive, manage the family business. But every business has to have money in it, right? That's how you function, a business. So you take your personal assets, your house, your bank accounts, your investments, and you move them into your business, your family business. And it does one amazing thing. It now avoids probate, because probate is only triggered when you own personal assets. You no longer own them if you have a living trust. You've now given them to the trust. And that's the concept of a living trust. And that's how you avoid probate. So that's the living trust concept. There are two types. There's one called a revocable living trust and an irrevocable living trust. And there are many subcategories that go with those trusts. In general, most Californians are looking at revocable living trusts, which means while you're alive, you can personally change anything you want in your living trust. Literally, even revoke it if you wanted to. And this is normally just the average Jane and Joe who has just a regular life, not somebody who lives in the Palisades and owns a lot of assets, but you generally are in charge of everything in your trust. The irrevocable trust is for more complex issues. You definitely need to have one-on-one legal advice regarding living trusts, irrevocable or revocable. Some of the discussions today have been about special needs trusts. Those are amazing tools within a living trust. They apply to people with special needs or disabilities. In California, if you leave money to somebody who is receiving disability benefits, such as Social Security disability. If you leave them money, it can literally disqualify them from their lifelong benefits to support themselves. A special needs trust allows the money that you would normally give to that person to be put into the living trust and kept there to help them live. So instead of giving them money, you help them buy a car, or you help them buy the TV that they need, or you provide transportation for them to get to another spot. So they're not receiving money that disqualifies them from assets or from disability, but they're receiving help that gives them a better quality way of living. That's what a special needs trust is. Now, special needs trusts in general are part of your living trust. So it's a good consideration to write a note to talk to an attorney about any person who's receiving disability about a possible special needs trust in that trust that you're looking at. A lot of people ask me about the differences between a will and a trust. So if you imagine in California that it's only if you own personal property in your name, real estate, bank accounts, vehicles, investments, when you own personal property, it triggers the requirement for a probate. Now, probate has different types of probate. Generally, if you're at the $164,250 rate for your assets, just in case you need that number again, $164,250 worth of assets. Basically, if you own a home or you have some money, you then have to have somebody on your behalf will go through probate to ask the judge where that money goes. If the house is sold, where the money goes with the house. That probate requirement allows you to designate how it is going to be distributed in court. So your will becomes like a love letter to the judge, where you tell him where you want the money to go. But it still goes through probate. Do you see the difference now? A living trust avoids the probate. A will designates what the judge should do with your probate. That's the real fundamental difference between a living trust and a probate action. So that should answer that one. A couple things that I wanted to bring up about advanced health directives and durable power of attorneys. A lot of confusion over those issues comes with because people believe those are documents in an estate plan that apply to after they die. But in fact, your advanced health care directive and your durable power of attorney work in conjunction with a living trust, not a will, but a living trust, to protect your assets and your decisions while you're alive. And I'll give you an example. If you have an advanced health directive that names somebody as an agent to enforce your decisions, and you become incapacitated, and you're not able to tell a doctor what your decisions are regarding your medical needs, that person can, if your advanced health directive says it's effective immediately, I'm going to come back to that issue, your agent can come into the hospital and enforce immediately whatever your medical decisions are that you put in that advanced health directive. If you do not have an advanced health directive, or if you have an advanced health directive that is called a springing advanced health directive, then the doctor must follow California law about your decision making unless your loved ones file for a conservatorship and can take over your health care. Advanced health directives that are not immediately effective upon signing are called springing power of attorneys. The springing power of attorney requires that there be two doctors who agree that you're incapacitated. Has anyone in this room had two doctors agree on anything, ever? It is a major problem, especially in California. So a springing power of attorney, both financial or health, can still place your loved ones in a position where they may have to seek legal action to be able to enforce your decisions. So please, check your advanced health directives, check your durable power of attorneys, know whether they are springing or if they are immediately effective, and seek some legal advice about how that will affect your lives in the future. Remember, these are documents for while you're alive, not after you pass away. They are no longer in effect after you pass away. Just a couple more things. Living trusts, again, are a wonderful tool to help avoid probate. But a lot of times, living trusts that come from groups, not individual attorneys, they do not prepare or help you prepare to put money into the trust. So remember, you have a business, and you're supposed to fund or put money in your business. So if you set up a living trust, but you never moved your house into the trust, you still personally own that house in your name. And if you pass away with that house in your personal name, it triggers probate. And you wasted all that money on setting up your living trust, and your family still must go through probate. So you should definitely know, if you have a living trust already, whether or not your assets have been moved into the trust to literally fund your trust and to avoid the triggers of probate. Okay, that's my Education 101 on living trusts and wills. So before we have any questions, I do want to say, I work for an attorney. Of course, my husband's the attorney. He is here today. I am limited to only giving general information. I can't give specific legal advice about your particular situation for two reasons. I'm a paralegal, and insurance doesn't allow it until we're in the office. But I will tell you that we do not charge for initial consultation. So you should definitely pick up a card and come in. There is no charge for you to come in and have us look at your living trust and make sure everything is there and that you understand what documents you have. There is zero fee for that, so I would encourage you to come in and see us. But I will take questions the best that I can, of course.
Any questions? Okay, Ms. Chair.
Thank you for that. You're great. You really answered a lot of questions. We have a advanced health directive that we had notarized, and now our kids, some of our kids that are on it, that we assigned to it, have moved, and so their address and their phone numbers have changed. Can we legally change, by lining it out and filling it in, changing it, can we do that? And it's still...
Very good question. So in case everybody didn't hear, can you make modifications to these types of legal documents? And I'll just say again, your durable power of attorney, your wills, your advanced health directives, these are not documents that you should ever write on, ever, under any conditions, should you ever write on these documents. It becomes ambiguous as to what your meaning is if you don't know the exact way to do it. You should always seek legal advice or get replacements and make sure that they're updated in an appropriate way. There is also ways that many people will keep their advanced health directive with an informational sheet that discussed updates to just contact information so that they can submit that to the hospital or to their doctor's office. But changing the advanced health directive literally could lead to ambiguity, especially with medical facilities. That may not be a good idea. One quick thing, if your advanced health directive is notarized, you need to double check with your attorney depending upon where it was done. Notarization is not sufficient in California under all situations. Usually 2 witnesses are required, so you should double check with an attorney. I would encourage you to just pick up a card. It's no charge to you.
So you can't put me away.
Another little thing about advanced health directives, there's a lot of hot topics going on in California that have come out of COVID-19. A lot of very unusual situations in the law that have occurred. You may want to also talk about updates with an attorney about things that might be important to you. I can give you just a quick example. If it's important to you and you believe in what's called the right to die, in California, we don't have the right to die. They will do everything they can to keep you alive in a medical facility. That's the requirement by the statute for medical facilities. So if you believe in your right to die, to choose, your health directive has to specify under what conditions you believe in that. For example, a persistent vegetative state, which means you're brain dead, or if you're in an irreversible coma. These are situations that panels of doctors have made decisions on. If your health directive specifies those things, but it doesn't go into some of the current situations, like if you are in a persistent vegetative state and they find out you then have cancer, do you allow chemotherapy or don't allow chemotherapy? And amazingly enough, they would give you chemotherapy because Sometimes it's a moneymaker, and sometimes they're required to just do it. So you definitely want to talk with an attorney about what the hot topic issues are and whether or not they mean something to you in your advanced health directive.
Howie, we'll take your question, and then for time purposes, we'll have our next speaker. I'm going to squeeze through here.
So does that include do not resuscitate, if that's your choice?
Your advanced health directive can include do not resuscitate rules within it. So you have to be really careful about your directions on do not resuscitate. A lot of people think that a DNR is what it's typically referred to. A DNR is only about if you're in the hospital and that you do not want to be resuscitated under these specific conditions that are generally referred to, a persistent vegetative state or what's called an irreversible coma. Generally, people are referring to that. They're saying, hey, I'm brain dead or I'm in an irreversible coma. Don't resuscitate me if I naturally stop breathing. That's the concept that they're going for. But some DNRs, depending upon the one that you signed, could mean under any conditions. So you're at home, you fall, you are knocked unconscious and you stop breathing and the ambulance shows up but you have a DNR that says do not resuscitate me under those conditions. Be really careful that you understand what the legal document means that you're signing. Seek legal advice so you understand the instructions that you're giving medical people about your medical decisions.
I don't mean to make this go longer, but on the subject of DNRs, is it true that when it comes to a DNR that you have to have a DNR on your person or filed with pretty much the hospital, the doctor's office, anywhere that you may be, that if it's not on your person, they won't take your word for it? Like you were saying, let's say you have to call the ambulance. If it's not on your person, they're not going to take somebody's word for it. They are legally bound to resuscitate you.
Yeah, absolutely. California has a legal requirement for resuscitation, zero doubt. That's why you've heard people say put it in the freezer. Not generally the best option to put it in the freezer. There's all kinds of legal pouches that you can put on the refrigerator that are magnetic, that have the recognized sign. My husband's also an EMT. He could tell you what his preferences are personally. But the concept of having the DNR or your advanced health directive wishes made available to emergency personnel has to come in a visible way that they can see it if it's contra what the statute says they're allowed to do. Clearly, there are apps that you can purchase on your phone that allow 911, allow immediate responders, first responders to look at your phone, open it, and you can even keep a copy of your scanned in document in your documents there. So these are all options that mostly attorneys would go through because they're pieces of your estate plan that when you see an attorney, they help you kind of corral all of these issues into one centralized location and have checklists to address all of those issues.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Okay, next up is Mary Hughes from High Desert Haven. So thank you, Mary, for coming to join us and representing long-term care. Just make sure you speak into the mic. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting us to come to this workshop. My name is Mary, and I've been in Ridgecrest for 5 years now, so I'm not a native of Ridgecrest, and a lot of you don't know who I am, and I don't know any of you. So, but I do know Tomieanna and Ed at the back, and through my great friend Esther Cyrus. So anyway, I'm here to talk to you about High Desert Haven or long-term care, just very briefly. So I know a lot of the churches are the places where a lot of elderlies go to, right? You hardly see a lot of young people in churches. So this is amazing because we don't get out in public to talk about long-term care. And you know it's a very, very sensitive subject to talk about, especially with your children. Because a lot of the times your children are the ones who's deciding where you go, not you. So, like everybody has spoken before, make sure you shop before your children shops for you. I know it's funny, but it's reality. Because you all don't want to talk about it. And when you come to being in the situation where you need to go, your children is just going to put you anywhere they want to. It's not a lie. It happens all the time. So I'm here to let you know that I'm available. If any of you want to come and talk about High Desert Haven, tour High Desert Haven, I'm here. We are the only big facility in the town that addresses long-term care for the elderly. We have another 6-bed facility here in town, so shop over there, shop with us. Go out of town. If you feel that San Diego is the best place for you to retire, go and see the facilities in San Diego. Go see the facilities in Las Vegas. So it's very important that you all talk about long-term care for everybody. Obviously, the best place to retire is your own home because you're so used to it. You've lived in your homes more than 50 years maybe. Shop for long-term care insurance. Yes, insurance companies, they offer this. And when you transition from your home to these facilities, your family or you have to get all the paperwork. We can't do it. We don't have any legal right to do it for you. You will have to do all the paperwork. What we can do is place you in the care where maybe come to us, stay with us, and do the process. That can happen. And then when your insurance pays, the money comes to us and you're cared for. We have assisted living. We are not a nursing home. So please bear in mind, we are not the nursing home. Ballastera is the nursing home in this town. So we assist people that can pretty much do everything on their own. So when you come into an assisted living facility, you are pretty much doing your own stuff. You're bathing yourself unless you want us to stand there and help you in case you need help. We provide you meals and we provide you activities. But we all know the meals, we've used to have families come and join their loved ones for meals. But since COVID, that has changed. So somebody was talking about advanced directives. Very, very important. Before you transition into a facility care, we will send you forms that you take to your doctors because you need a physician report. Then I will send you also a pre-admission form to know about you. Because if you come to us and I don't know anything about you, I don't know how to care for you. I don't know what you like as far as food is. I don't know what kind of education you have, which is very important because if you come into us for dementia, for example, we do have memory care. We have a lot of dementia people. So if you come to assisted living and eventually you transition to dementia unit, we want to know what you used to do when you were young. We want to know what kind of favorite TV programs you watch. Because if you come into dementia care and we put rock and roll on TV, that's going to drive you nuts. Precisely. It's going to drive you crazy because when you have dementia, your memory, your short-term memory is gone. You're going to live like you were in your 50s. You're going to live like you were in your 40s or some teens. So that's why we collect all this information. Because when you transition, we know, don't put rock and roll for Mr. Johnston because he's going to come and smack you on your face. Because that's not him. So I've only been in this position. My boss or the owner of the place is Abraham Matthew. And I've only worked there for 3 months. And I would never have worked over there had my mother-in-law, has been placed over there. She lives over there. And I would never work over there because of her. That's not the point. That's why I worked over there. I worked over there because my boss saw me, and I asked him about his facility. Do you have any, work over here? Because I want to work. I never worked when I first moved here. My husband moved us here, and I stayed home. But when COVID hit, I couldn't travel back to see my mother and my family every 6 months. So eventually I thought, my goodness, if I don't work, I'm going to check my husband into assisted care facility. Because I was going crazy because I couldn't fly to see my elderly mother. She's in her 80s. So I went over there and he said, yeah, I have a job for you. So I said, I want to do assisted care. And he goes, no, I have a better job for you. I said, oh, I don't think so. And he goes, yeah, I do. I want you to do this. So I said, okay, what am I supposed to do? I don't know anything about assisted living. I have hospital background. My husband is Dr. Hughes, so that's how we met in the hospital. So I said, I need to know about the facilities. So I had to learn on my own, plus the good staff at Assisted High Desert Haven. And another thing also that we want to encourage everybody, even if you are not going to an assisted facility, or if you think in 6 months, I think I'm going to check into one of these facilities, go to your doctor. Call me. I'll send you the form where you can take to your doctor now, and it's good for a year. So if you have, think, okay, I'm going to go, call me, I'll send you the form, take it to your doctor. What the form says is your health history, very brief, and your medications, because every time you come to an assisted facility in the whole state of California, not just us, if you take vitamins, we need physician orders for that. If you take like a cream that you just rub, as long as there's any medicine in that cream, we need doctor's orders for that. So families, I know it's frustrating because we always tell you, oh, I can't give this because I don't have a physician orders. Don't get mad at us. That's why I'm here, to explain and encourage you. Anytime your loved ones goes into a facility, call your doctor, set up that appointment, take every medication to your doctors, including over-the-counter medication. We can't even give Tylenol without a physician order. Because if we give Tylenol, for example, and you have other medication that interacts with Tylenol, well, the state don't come after you because you gave it to me. The state comes after me because I gave it to your loved one. That's how the system works. So, very encouraging. Please, if you ever think of going into these facilities, you have a whole year to go. This form is good for a year, the physician's report. Then Tomieanna was talking to you about, and the funeral director, about advanced directives. Yes, we take those too. And we also send you a form, it's called POST. It's the Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. This form is not a requirement, but we encourage people to fill this form out because when you come into the facility and we call ambulance to come and get you, guess what form we're going to give them? The pink form. Every facility in the state of California copies this on a pink paper because it's bright. So when you come into the facility, please do not be alarmed because we've posted a pink sheet of paper on your loved one's doors. The reason why it's there is it's easy access for the ambulance, and it's easy access for us because if somebody codes And like they say, there's no paper over there, you're considered full code. Unless you have that paper behind that door, ambulance sees it, they look at it, and then when you are transported to the hospital, we put that form on you, or we have you hold it, take it with you, so that way everybody knows what your request is. So it's very important. And if you have any issues with the facility, please let me know. I'm in charge of the complaints. I love complaints. I do. Because complaints is good for improvement. If we don't have any complaints, or if we don't have any issues, we're just going to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. No change. Because we don't know that we're not doing it right until somebody tells us. And also, I'd like to, let you all know that sometimes when you come into these facilities, we have these people that are the millennials. You know how they talk. They're talking like they're running a 100-meter dash. So don't hesitate to tell them, hey, slow down. This is my mother you're talking to. If you don't want to slow down, get somebody else to slow down. They will not get offended. They'll come and talk to me about it. And then I'll reiterate to them that, yeah, they're in their 80s. They're not used to running fast. They ran fast 60 years ago. You weren't even thought about. So, little things like that. Don't hesitate to come and talk to me. And if I can't fix the problem, don't worry, I'll just call Abraham. But most of the time, I can fix the problem. Because I talk to our staff, I talk to the residents, and assisted living for the elderly is not bad at all. Because you have more rights than we do. When you go into any of these facilities, your rights is like 17 pages long. My right is 1 page. Because you are the reason why we exist. You are protected by the government. So if you feel like you are not protected in any of these facilities, we post numbers for you to call. Call them. They will come, don't worry. You call them today, the state is there tomorrow. That's how the state works when it comes to the elderly. You're protected. If you go to the doctor's appointment and doctor sees things in you that's not right, they are obligated by the state of California to report. And guess what? They're going to come to us. They're not going to tell us who reported it. They don't have to tell us who reported it. They will come unannounced. They don't have to tell us they're coming, but they will tell us at the door who they are. So you have many rights as an individual. When you go to these facilities, it doesn't matter where you go. Bakersfield, go there. San Diego, like I said, San Francisco, Las Vegas. You have more right than the facility itself. And if you are a veteran and you fought in the war, there is benefits for you too. We don't do that benefits. You'll have to do that through your office, your local office, and you do all that. But we take you. So we are there. I'm over there Monday to Friday. If you have any questions about the place, please feel free to call me or come to the back or come to the facility. Does anybody over here have any friends over there? What about family members over there? Okay. And I just want to let you know, I'm not affiliated with any religion beliefs, but we are obligated to give you whatever you want as far as religion is. If you don't want to watch our TV program, because we have a church that we can put on anytime. If you don't want that, we have to turn that off and put what you want on. So like I said, you have more protection than anybody that works over there. And anybody that owns the facility, you are protected, everybody's protected as long as they reside with us. And our memory care, we have 24 beds in the memory care, and all our rooms are private. Some facilities share rooms. We don't share the rooms with other residents unless it's a husband, wife, or a husband, husband, wife, wife. We can't avoid that. So that's the only time we share rooms. So does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Talk about long-term care, and you talk about assisted living, where assisted living means the person generally can care for themselves. To me, long-term care is kind of like a more severe situation than assisted living. Is long-term care more terminal, or do you have people in assisted living that are considered long-term care?
That's a good question. When you come into assisted living, you are transitioning to long-term care. Just depends on where your long-term care is heading. If it's heading to memory care, or if you're good until 113, like our longest, yes, Opal. Opal was a resident of ours. You all know that. So if you are good doing everything that you do with little dementia, you can stay in the assisted living until you pass. That's why long-term care is government term, but it is really assisted living, because when you transition, by the time when you come in at 80 and you're 90, you're going to need a lot of assistance. We cannot send you to a nursing home because you are a resident with us. So we take care of you unless you go to the hospital at 90 years old, you fell, you broke your hips, you go to the hospital and doctor said, she can't come home. She's got to go to nursing facility. So then Belisara takes care of you. When you are rehabbed, you come back to us. You're still considered long-term care. We still care for you. You may not be able to walk as much as you used to, but we assist you with bathing. We assist you with grooming, anything that you need assistance. But long-term care, you can come from 62 all the way up to 113 years old. The only time you transition into memory care with our facility is if you start wandering. I mean, it's a given thing. Majority of us have dementia of some sort. I have dementia of some sort because I forgot where I put my keys. Like one time I had my glasses on my head. I was looking around. I was asking my husband, have you seen my glasses? Where did I put my glasses? He just looked at me, let me wander all over the house. And like he really let me wander. And he said, it's on your head. You have dementia. Do you need to go and share a room with my mother? I was like, oh my goodness, yes. So that's the only time we transition you. And we always, in our admissions agreement, we put that down. Because if you start wondering there are perimeters at the facility. If you just wander around in the assisted living side, we don't move you straight away to memory care because you are safe where you're wandering. If you wander outside the actual building and you make it all the way to memory care, that triggers us to call your family and say, I'm sorry, but we just want to let you know that we're going to move your father to memory care because this is what happened. But we have to document that. If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. You can come back to me and say, that didn't happen.
So going to one facility to another, steps up and down, would that be your decision, or do you need input from the person's doctor to verify that that's really what's going on?
That is, because when you come in, okay, we have physician reports. After 1 year, we have to renew that physician report. We tell you, you need to call your doctor again, have your daughter call the doctor because you need to go in. If the doctor puts down, because it always changes, if the doctor puts down declined, like cognitive, whatever the doctors do, you know how these doctors are, they have their own language. We have to watch for that. So we have to compare that with how you're doing. So then if we say, okay, Mary Hughes is wandering around, we call the family. If the family wants us to call the doctors again, we call the doctors again, or you call the doctors again, because it could happen within 6 months. Dementia is crazy. It could happen very slowly, or it could happen very fast. So it's different people, different person. It's all different with everybody. So, thank you.
Okay, for Mary, thank you so much. I apologize deeply. I don't mean to seem abrupt. Great information. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
To respect everybody's time, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and finish up. Partially because I know there's a couple that has some littles upstairs that probably are getting antsy. In addition to that, we also need to prepare for service tonight. So yay Bill. But I please encourage, I know you guys probably still have questions, you still have some things that you would like to find out. I invite Mary and Gary and Tomieanna and Debra to stick around for a few more minutes so that folks can pick up their information, maybe ask a few more questions. Please don't be alarmed if we start kind of cleaning up in order to prepare for service tonight. I would like to ask, though, is Ed Cannon here? Ed, okay, there you are. Ed actually was also offering to come speak because you worked in Department of Human Services? Yes. Okay. And so he's able to answer a lot of questions regarding some of government. I'm going to, please correct me if I say this incorrectly, government assistance programs or long-term care and things like that on that end of it as well. Ed, would you mind terribly if I invited you to stick around at the back so if folks have questions for you, they can come talk to you? Okay, so Ed will be at the back at one of the tables, so if you have any questions for him, we would be able to do that. And again, if you have questions that come later, don't hesitate to text us so we can get those forwarded to folks. And I think that's it. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I had a great time. I hope you had a great time. And I'm going to pray as we close out. Father, thank you so much again for just giving us the ability to prepare, that you do have a plan for us. Thank you for all of these amazing folks who have a desire to want to do the right thing for themselves and their families, and those who came to represent organizations to help us do that. So we look forward to being able to do this successfully. We just ask that you bless each person here and the time that they've given, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you online for joining us.